There was once someone who had spent so many years living in grey concrete buildings, breathing recycled air, and staring at glowing screens, that they had almost forgotten that the world contained colors more vibrant than anything technology could produce. Life had become a monotonous cycle of artificial lighting, processed food, and synthetic experiences that left the soul feeling hungry for something real, something wild, something that could remind the heart what it meant to be truly alive. One morning, while mindlessly scrolling through images of other people's adventures, this person stumbled across a photograph that seemed to glow with its own inner light. It showed a hidden valley somewhere in the mountains, where wildflowers bloomed in impossible profusion, fields of purple lupines mixed with golden poppies, bright red paintbrush flowers scattered among white daisies, and carpets of blue forget-me-nots stretching as far as the eye could see. A crystal-clear river wound through the center of this floral paradise, reflecting not just the flowers but the snow-capped peaks that surrounded the valley like protective guardians. Something about this image awakened a longing so deep and sudden that it felt like remembering a half-forgotten dream from childhood. Without fully understanding the compulsion, this person began researching the location, eventually discovering that the valley was real but hidden, accessible only by a hiking trail that few people knew about, requiring a full day's walk through challenging mountain terrain to reach. Most people, upon learning about the difficulty of the journey, would abandon the idea as impractical. But something about that photograph had planted a seed of determination that refused to be dismissed. Weeks of preparation followed. Purchasing hiking boots that felt strange after years of walking only on sidewalks, buying a backpack that seemed enormous compared to the small purse that usually carried the essentials of city life, learning to read topographic maps and use a compass. The night before the hike, sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of flowers more colorful than anything the waking mind had ever seen, and streams that sang with voices clearer than any music heard in years. The trailhead was reached just as dawn was breaking over the eastern mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that no photograph had ever quite captured. The trail began gently, winding through forests of pine and fir, where the air tasted clean and sweet, carrying scents that awakened memories from deep childhood. The smell of Christmas trees, the fragrance of forest floors covered in soft needles, the fresh crispness that comes only from air that has never been filtered through machines or polluted by exhaust. As the trail climbed higher, the forest began to change. The trees became smaller and more scattered, their branches sculpted by mountain winds into fantastic shapes that looked like natural artwork. Wildflowers began to appear along the path, first just a few hardy blooms that had learned to thrive in rocky soil, then more and more, until the trail itself seemed to be leading through a garden that had been planted by the mountain spirits themselves. The higher the trail climbed, the more spectacular the views became. Valleys spread out below like green carpets dotted with lakes that sparkled like jewels in the morning sun. Mountain peaks rose in every direction, some still crowned with snow even in the height of summer, their granite faces catching and reflecting light in ways that made them seem to glow from within. Each turn in the trail revealed new vistas more breathtaking than the last, until it became impossible to take more than a few steps without stopping to absorb yet another scene of impossible beauty. Hours passed in this way, climbing steadily upward, pausing frequently to rest and marvel, feeling muscles that had grown soft from sedentary living gradually remember their strength. The backpack that had seemed so heavy at the beginning of the hike became lighter as the body adapted, or perhaps as the spirit became more buoyant with each step away from the familiar constraints of ordinary life. The sound of the city, traffic, sirens, construction, the constant hum of machinery, had long since faded, replaced by the much older music of wind through trees, the distant cry of hawks circling overhead, and the rhythmic sound of boots finding their grip on the mountain path. By midday, The trail had climbed above the tree line entirely, entering a realm of pure rock and sky where the air was thin and every breath felt pressure. The sun blazed down from a sky so blue it seemed artificial, while all around, mountain peaks stretched to the horizon like a frozen ocean of stone and snow. It was here, in this landscape that seemed more like another planet than anywhere on familiar Earth, that the trail began to descend into what the map promised was the hidden valley. The descent was steep and required careful attention to footing, but with each downward step, new wonders revealed themselves. First came the sound of running water, not the distant murmur that had been audible from the heights, but the clear, joyful sound of a stream that was growing larger and more musical as the path approached its source. Then came the scent of flowers, not just the subtle fragrance of mountain blooms, but something so rich and sweet and complex that it seemed to contain the essence of every garden that had ever existed. And then, around a bend in the trail that seemed no different from dozens of others, the hidden valley revealed itself in all its impossible glory. The photograph that had started this journey had been beautiful, but it had been only a pale shadow of the reality. The valley stretched for miles in every direction, a bowl of perfect meadowland surrounded by towering granite walls that seemed to have been designed specifically to protect this paradise from the outside world. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were flowers. Not just flowers, but seas of flowers, oceans of flowers, entire continents of flowers in colors so vivid they seemed to pulse with their own light. Purple lupines stood tall like candles, their spikes reaching toward the sky in perfect formation. Golden poppies carpeted entire hillsides, their petals so bright they almost hurt to look at directly. Red paintbrush flowers created rivers of scarlet that wound between islands of white daisies and blue forget-me-not. Pink shooting stars nodded in the gentle breeze beside yellow buttercups and orange tiger lilies. The variety was endless, the beauty overwhelming, the effect absolutely magic. Through the center of this floral wonderland wound the river that had been promised in the photograph, but seeing it in person revealed details that no image could capture. The water was so clear it seemed to be made of liquid crystal, reflecting not just the flowers and sky but the very soul of anyone who looked into its depth. The sound it made was not just the babbling of water over rocks, but something that seemed to contain music, laughter, and ancient songs, all woven together into a symphony of pure joy. Finding a comfortable spot beside the river, a natural seat formed by smooth granite stones, provided the perfect vantage point for absorbing the full impact of this hidden paradise. From here it was possible to see the entire valley spread out like a living tapestry woven from every color in the spectrum, and several that seemed to exist nowhere else in nature. The air was warm but not hot, cooled by the river and scented by millions of flowers releasing their fragrance into the mountain breeze. As the afternoon progressed, the valley revealed its subtle rhythms and hidden inhabitants. Butterflies appeared as if from nowhere, monarchs and swallowtails and dozens of species that seemed to exist only in this magical place, their wings creating moving rainbows as they danced from flower to flower. Hummingbirds zipped through the air like tiny jeweled rockets, their wings beating so fast they were invisible, their throats glowing like rubies and emeralds, as they fed on nectar from blooms that seemed designed specifically for their enjoyment. The river itself teemed with life, not just the fish that occasionally jumped to catch insects, their silver bodies flashing in the sunlight, but tiny creatures that made the water sparkle and dance with bioluminescent light wherever it was disturbed. Dragonflies skimmed the surface, their wings catching the light like stained glass windows, while water striders walked across the surface tension as if the laws of physics had been suspended in this enchanted place. As evening approached, the valley began its transformation into something even more magical. The setting sun, filtered through the crystal clear mountain air, painted everything in shades of gold and rose that made the already spectacular flowers seem to glow from within. The granite walls of the valley caught and reflected this light, creating a natural amphitheater filled with warm golden illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Night fell gradually in the high country, the sky slowly darkening from blue to purple to deep indigo, studded with more stars than seemed possible. In the protected environment of the valley, with no light pollution for hundreds of miles in any direction, the Milky Way appeared in all its glory, a river of light flowing across the sky that seemed to mirror the crystal river flowing through the meadow below. Lying back on the soft grass, surrounded by the gentle fragrance of night-blooming flowers and the soft sound of water moving over stones, it became possible to feel connected to something vast and eternal, and profoundly peaceful. The night sounds of the valley were unlike anything heard in the civilized world, not the harsh noises of human activity, but the gentle symphony of nature at rest. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called with a voice like liquid silver. Night-blooming flowers released their fragrances into the cool air, creating perfumes so complex and beautiful that they seemed to contain the essence of dreams themselves. The river continued its eternal song, a lullaby that had been singing creatures to sleep in this valley for thousands of years, before the first human ever found this hidden paradise. Sleep came easily and deeply, there beside the singing river under the blazing stars, wrapped in a sleeping bag that suddenly seemed as comfortable as any bed ever slept in. Dreams, when they came, were filled with colors, more vivid than waking life, and fragrances sweeter than any perfume. In those dreams, it became possible to understand the language of flowers, to hear the stories the river was telling, to feel connected to the eternal cycle of seasons and growth and renewal that governed this magical place. Morning arrived with the gentle touch of sunlight on the eastern rim of the valley, gradually illuminating first the mountain peaks, then the granite walls, then finally the flower-filled meadows themselves. Awakening in this paradise felt like being born into a completely new world, one where beauty was not something to be purchased or produced, but something that existed naturally, abundantly, freely for anyone wise enough to seek it out, and patient enough to make the journey. The hike back to the trailhead later that day was completely different from the journey in. Each step away from the valley felt like leaving part of the soul behind, but also like carrying part of the valley's magic back into the ordinary world. The flowers seen along the trail, on the way up, which had seemed so beautiful at the time, now appeared pale and ordinary compared to the spectacular blooms of the hidden valley. But they were no longer ordinary at all, because now they were connected to something larger, part of a network of wild beauty that extended from the smallest roadside blossom to the most spectacular mountain meadow. The return to civilization was jarring, but also transformative. Colors seemed more vivid everywhere, in grocery store produce, in clothing, in art, even in the artificial lights of the city. The memory of the hidden valley had awakened something that could no longer be put back to sleep. An appreciation for natural beauty, a hunger for wild places, an understanding that the world contained magic for those willing to seek it out. The photograph that had started this entire journey now hung framed on the wall, no longer just a pretty picture but a portal to a place that lived forever in memory. A reminder that paradise is not a distant dream, but a real place that can be reached by anyone determined enough to make the journey, patient enough to walk the difficult trail, and wise enough to recognize magic when they finally find it blooming in hidden valleys that exist just beyond the boundaries of ordinary life.